Welcome everyone to Ex-Mormons for Christ. I'm Jennifer, and today we're going to be looking at the 9 differences between the Mormon Jesus and the Christian Jesus. Before we get started, I'm going to pray that in particular, if you are a Mormon, that right now as you listen, first that you will listen and that the Holy Spirit will minister to you in a way that will open your spiritual ears, meaning give you understanding to hear and to recognize the truth, and that through that you have the courage to walk away from Mormonism and to accept Jesus Christ and his Christianity. All right, 9 major differences. So the first is a category, it's the identity of Christ. We're going to go look at 3 things. Okay, identity issue number 1 is how Jesus is related or connected to Satan. Mormon Jesus says that Jesus is related to Satan because Jesus is Lucifer's brother. However, that's not true. You can look in Hebrews chapter 1, verses 1 through 4. Jesus is superior, it says, to the angels. That means that Jesus is superior to Lucifer because Satan is a fallen angel. Identity issue number 2. Is Jesus God in the flesh? Mormon Jesus, they reject that. Mormon Jesus is not God in the flesh, but that's a lie. In truth, according to Matthew 1:23 and Isaiah 7:14, Jesus is Emmanuel, God with us. Identity issue number 3 is Jesus the last priest, the last high priest? Mormon Jesus, no, Jesus is not the last priest. They've got a whole bunch of other ideas around the priesthood. Look at my priesthood teaching if you want more on that. That Jesus, no, is not the last priest and he's not the last high priest. But that's a lie. According to the chapters 9, 10, and 11 in Hebrews, which goes into depth, Jesus is 1, yes, the last priest, and holds the high priesthood, and no one else can hold it. All right, moving on from that, how about Jesus's authority? Can Jesus or should Jesus be worshiped? Mormon Jesus, no, you do not worship Jesus. You worship God only. But that's not correct. According to Matthew chapter 2, verse 2, and also in John 9:38 and other places, it records that Jesus received worship. This is the exact same worship that is described as giving worship to God. That actually means in the Greek to worship with reverence, to humbly bow down, to prostrate yourself on the ground, coming from the word proskuneo. Yes, Jesus is to be worshiped. Next, issue number 5, where Jesus suffered. The Mormon Jesus suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane for the world and people's sins, but that's not true. Jesus suffered on the cross. Number 6, are we supposed to have a personal and individual relationship with Jesus? The Mormon Jesus, Mormons say no. They talk about that now, but it's in a twisted way. If you go look up LDS.org and you look at how they describe a personal relationship, they are still not referring to the one-on-one unity that Jesus says we are supposed to have. So Mormon Jesus, no, you don't get an individual, personal relationship with Jesus as God. Christian Jesus, biblical Jesus, yes, we are to have a personal relationship, which is discussed, and you can read more about that in John, 1 John and 2 John. Number 7, how was Jesus conceived? Mormon Jesus was conceived when God had natural or sexual They mean sexual relations with Mary. But that's lying. Biblical Jesus, Jesus was conceived when the Holy Spirit overpowered Mary, which you can find in Matthew. Next, issue 8, what did Jesus accomplish in terms of salvation? Mormon Jesus, he accomplished giving you only the ability to get to a certain level of heaven after, quote, all you can do. Only Mormons live in that highest level of heaven. That's not true. According to both Galatians and Romans, which describes in detail that one, Jesus accomplished full salvation, meaning anybody who receives it as a gift, not after all you can do, as a gift, gets to go live in heaven with God. 9, how are we related? So how are we related to Jesus and God? Mormon Jesus says that we are all natural children of God because we had a spiritual existence in the pre-mortal existence. We're all God's children. But that's a lie. No one is God's child until they are born again. And when they become God's child, God adopts them. It is not a natural children relationship. Okay, a person is adopted by God. So in summary, here's the 9 major differences. If someone comes to you and says that we worship, a Mormon says we worship the same Jesus, this is the Jesus of the Bible, then you should come back and you should say, no, it is not the same Jesus. Your Jesus is not the biblical Jesus. Your Jesus is your own cult version, twisted, reformed image, but that image that you have is not the real Jesus. So the biblical Jesus. So how they're related to Satan, their identity as God, whether they are to be worshiped, whether he is to be worshiped, his identity as priest, last and high priest, where he suffered, whether we have a personal relationship and how we obtain that, how he was conceived, what he accomplished in salvation, and finally, how we are related. If you want any more information about these topics, I encourage you to go look at my other teaching series. I go into detail about some of these specific topics. And again, as always, as we wrap up, I welcome any comments or questions that you might have about this. All right. Hope you feel equipped and able to recognize that the cult Jesus is nothing like the real Jesus, and that a person who wants to come to Jesus has to accept that this is who he says he is. All right.